Hello and welcome to Elaine Online. Today, I enter the world of nonfiction and take a look at The Magic of Believing by Claude M. Bristol, a book that was published in 1948. My copy was published by Jeremy P. Tarcher and Penguin, and it was published in 2015. In other words, this isn't a new book, but it's certainly one that still has value today and continues to be published. Also, it includes the original pamphlet that Claude produced in 1933, TNT, It Rocks the Earth. And I really like this part on the cover as well. The classic guide to the miracle power of your mind. In other words, everything you need to change your life and change your circumstances is right here, and everyone has access to that. The back cover has the book listed as inspirational, self-help, and new thought, which is rather interesting considering how old this book is. It also goes on to say that, as if by magic, some people know how to make wishes come true. In the classic exploration of mental visualization and autosuggestion, journalist and businessman Claude M. Bristol discloses the secret of turning belief into success. If you haven't seen my other video on Claude M. Bristol, you may be wondering, why am I mentioning the dates? Personally, I believe that it is important to fully appreciate and understand the work of an author. It's helpful to also understand the time frame and events that were happening when the work was written and produced. So in the case of The Magic of Believing, the book was published after World War II, and the motivation was to give hope and inspiration so that people could find a way to move forward and reach their goals. TNT, It Rocks the Earth, which I've referred to as a pamphlet and which is also described as a book, was published in 1933 during the Great Depression. Again, it was to help people try and find hope, be able to believe in themselves, and move forward and work on self-confidence and reaching goals. It's important to understand what was happening in that time, and there were people who read and used the work and became quite famous and reached the goals that they had in mind. Whether that was buying a new home or amassing different amounts of money, goals are going to be different for everyone. And it's important to keep that in mind as you read the novel or move through life in general. As I also mentioned in my other video on Claude, unlike H.G. Wells, Claude still saw humans as being able to move forward, reaching goals, and still believed in hope for humanity. H.G. Wells was crushed by the events of World War I and II and didn't seem as hopeful about humans and what the future held. I believe that's also important to understand because we have two gentlemen, granted different situations and circumstances, but keep in mind that Claude served in World War I. In other words, he saw the horrors of what were happening firsthand, and yet he was still able to come through that and hold on to the belief that humanity would find a way and move forward. So it's important to keep in mind that whatever your circumstance and situation, part of that ability to move forward and still be hopeful is how you put those events in your mind and how you feel about having experienced them. Are there life lessons? Are there things that happen to you? Are you able to come to terms with it and find a way to move forward? And that's something that only an individual can answer for themselves, because only you know the life experiences you have been through, the supports and resources that you have available, and what your personal goals are. H.G. Wells and Claude Bristol both had different experiences during World War I and World War II. Claude Bristol served during World War I, and he would have seen some very different things than H.G. Wells. The difference is that Claude continued to believe in humanity and produced work that tried to inspire hope and self-belief and being able to move forward after different events. H.G. Wells was absolutely crushed by the events of World War I and World War II and didn't share the same hope for humanity. I mention that because I believe it's important to understand that although people may live through the same time periods and be around different events, how they come to the other side can be very different. And that isn't in terms of being right or wrong. I believe it's important to understand your own viewpoints and how you view the world, because that certainly makes a difference on the goals that you set, the belief that you have in yourself, and how you decide to move forward with future events. The main message that Claude brings through in his work is to have faith in yourself, in your goals, in your abilities, and what you have to contribute. Believe in yourself, and don't let yourself be swayed by the negativity of others. In other words, when you have a goal, and it is important to make sure the goal is realistic and achievable. So, in other words, whether it's buying a new car, buying a house, or getting that dream job, you also need to understand that to get to any of those things, sometimes you may need to finish education, get some specialized education, you need to apply for the job and prepare. There are steps to getting to reaching your goal. And that's very important to keep in mind. You cannot just sit there and wish and hope for something to work out. It takes some effort and work on your part to get there. And I'm stressing that because although I have read a number of different books on the law of attraction, I've watched different videos, I've had numerous conversations, sadly, too often what people forget to mention is that you need to do something to reach those goals. Just sitting and wishing and hoping is not how it happens. So please do keep that in mind as you're setting your goals. There's also the next step that goes to what kinds of resources do you need? Who do you need to make connections with? You need to plan things out, take the steps, and start moving forward. In other words, maybe the goal that you have isn't going to come around within the next month or even the next year. But in order to achieve it, you need to take those baby steps one at a time to finally get to where you want to be. The other important thing that I would like to mention is that sometimes people tend to give up because it either doesn't work out quickly enough or they just feel like it's suddenly become too much work. Keep in mind, if it's what you're truly committed to, then you'll find a way to keep moving forward, and the people and the resources that you need when the time is right will suddenly appear for you. But you need to keep making the effort, and you need to keep your eye on the goal. So a term to keep in mind is energy flows where attention goes. So if you keep your attention and your focus on the goal long term, eventually you're going to get there. But it's going to take time. The law of attraction is far from a new concept. Something that people are well aware of if you have read a variety of different books and done research over a few decades. The difference is that it has become a booming industry over the last few decades between books, authors, the different seminars, cruises, merchandise, you name it. If there's a way to make money off it, someone has figured it out. So my advice is buyer beware. Consider the sources, consider the motivation, and definitely consider the material. I'm not saying that there aren't good works out there or that it isn't helpful to attend seminars and workshops. I am saying if you have attended some and you have the information, then it's time to start putting that into use within your life and giving things a try. It's the one thing that I very much appreciate about the magic of believing. I can pick it up. There's always different sections that I enjoy reviewing, and I've read the book 3 times, and each time I get a little bit more from it. So, keep in mind the motivation and the purpose. One of my favorite lines watching an Eckhart Tolle video was when someone had mentioned to him that they had been following him and attending all his seminars for months. And this person believed that, that was a great thing because they had been following along. Eckhart's response was classic. Why are you still coming to the seminars? I'm pretty much giving the same information. Now it's time to go start putting that into action in your life. In other words, Eckhart isn't about people following him around for decades. He has information to share. He has a wonderful way of describing it and sharing it, and he's hoping that people put that information into use in their daily lives and are able to benefit from it. I have a great deal of respect for him in particular, having read his work, The Power of Now, and having watched a number of his YouTube videos. There are a number of other wonderful law of attraction authors out there who also have YouTube videos and books. So my advice is check out a few different people. Everyone has a different way of describing what is a great way to reach your goals and get there. And the key is finding the person that speaks the best to you and makes sense. The Magic of Believing is a book I very much enjoy, and I've read it several times, especially when I'm maybe feeling a bit down or things seem a bit challenging, and there's always something new to discover. I enjoy the different examples and the quotes that Claude provides. Claude read hundreds of books on psychology, psychic abilities, religion, science, ancient magic. It is also important to remember that Claude was reading this back in the early 1900s, as in the 30s and 40s. Unlike today, where you have a cell phone and the internet, Amazon, Audacity, where you can get audiobooks and so many other things, when Claude was growing up, those things were not available, which meant he needed to find the books, track them down, and read them. So he spent quite a bit of time researching the different subjects before putting together his ideas. And again, keep in mind, this book was published when he was in his late 50s. In other words, it isn't about rushing and having to do everything right away, early on. There are things that come up and become successful and achievable later in your life. It's about the time and effort that you're willing to put in to reach the goals. He also talks about the ebb and flow of life, and I touched on this a bit earlier in the video with the impact that Claude and H.G. Wells both had on their lives after the events of World War I and World War II. Life doesn't always tick along smooth for anyone. There are always hiccups and bumps and different things that occur in our lives. The difference is, how do you navigate and work through those different hiccups and bumps? In other words, do you see them as life lessons and different reasons for the event happening? Or do you see it as something that is always happening to you and feel like you're out of control? Because depending on the viewpoint that you have, that is going to make a difference on how you come to terms with the event, how successfully you move forward, or whether you're constantly struggling and trying to find a way out of that struggle. It comes down to perspective, and that's something that only you can take control of. So if you need to, definitely talk to other people, reach out, get that support, but it all comes down to perspective and your effort. Everything starts as an idea. Before you can have a goal, you need to think about it. And when you think of all the different things in our world, or you look around your room, all of it began as ideas. Perfect examples, the books on either side of me, began as ideas and thoughts by the author, who then took the time to research, put together the information, complete the work, but then they also had to find a publisher and get the information out there. The different tools that you can use to reach your goals and achieve what is important to you are things like daily affirmations, and be sure to put them in the present tense, as in you've already achieved them. You can say your goals quietly in your head and make sure that you're staying focused on the long-term goal. Also, people use vision boards, and they have them put up and review them, and then as the goals are achieved, they may take those off the vision board and replace them with other things. There's lots of different ways to do that. Claude also talks about doing a mirror exercise, and it's something that also comes up in Julia Cameron's work. And why do I keep mentioning different authors and things that connect? Because as I've been a reader for decades, what I have come to appreciate is that all the different works that I have read have different connections. So it's wonderful to read a different variety of genres and make those different connections. It's important to check out your sources, and you have to keep in mind, what do you have available? Even today, in 2022, not everyone has a cell phone. In fact, I know some people who still refuse to use one. There are people who don't have access to the internet at home, and there are people who aren't on social media. So it's important to factor in, where are you getting your information? Do you check your sources? Do you even bother to research things? Or are you one of those people who, oh, it was on Facebook and Twitter, so it must be fact? No, it doesn't. And check your information, because the goals that you set and the plans that you make are only as good as the information and the resources that you utilize. So be sure to, again, be clear on your goals, have good plans in place, and be prepared to take the steps that you need to take to reach the goal. In other words, don't just give up if something doesn't work out right away. Everything takes time. Claude also talks about being mindful. In other words, if you stay in a positive frame of mind, you focus on gratitude, you focus on blessings, then what you will notice in your world are a lot of positive, wonderful things coming your way. You also need to distinguish between the difference of a need and a desire. For example, if you need a car to get to work, then you're going to focus on that very clearly and work towards reaching that goal and being able to purchase that car. On the other hand, if you desire a fancy car just because, it would look nice or you think it's impressive, you're still going to focus on that goal, but it's not going to be as big a priority as the car for getting to and from work. Another event that Claude talks about in his book occurred on October the 20th, 1938. It was the radio broadcast by Orson Welles of The War of the Worlds, written by H.G. Wells. People who missed the beginning of that radio broadcast began to panic, freak out, were leaving their homes and trying to get out of the city because they didn't hear on the beginning of the broadcast that it was a retelling of H.G. Wells' story of the invasion of the Martians. Now, today people may laugh and go, well, that's just ridiculous. Like, how could they not know? But again, keep in mind, in 1938, there were no cell phones, there was no internet, and there was no social media. So it isn't like people could just pick up a cell phone and go, hey, did you hear about this? Or text or call each other. It was a very different world. And again, it's important to keep that type of information in mind when you're considering the different events. It's also important because, again, it gives you perspective on how people respond to information and checking out sources. It is also important to be selective about who you talk to regarding your goals. In other words, sometimes it's better to just keep it to yourself, make your plans, and start moving forward. There are other times where it's helpful to talk to the people who will be supportive. They may be able to lead you to different resources, give you different ideas you may not have considered, and be very selective about that. Do not spend your time on the negative ninnies or what some people refer to as trolls, because they are not going to be helpful. They're not going to uplift or inspire you. And sadly, some of them do not want you to achieve your goals. Because if you do, then it means they have to take a look at themselves and wonder why maybe they're not moving forward and at a different place. Because let's be serious. People who are happy, fulfilled, and living their best life have no need to attack and undermine other people. It just isn't something that seems relevant in their world. So always keep in mind, are the people around you uplifting, supportive, inspiring, encouraging? Because if they're not, then you need to reconsider who you have around you. If you have read The Magic of Believing, please leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought of the work. If you found the information in this video helpful and you think it may be a book worth giving a try, then again, let me know down below. I always recommend that first, when you're trying out a book, Check your public library because it's the best way to give a book a test run and see if it's something you're interested in. And if you find that you're enjoying it, then there are lots of different options for buying it, whether that's an audiobook or a hardcover book, paperback. Be sure to check things out first. If you're interested in more content like this, be sure to click on the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you know when I upload new content. Until next time, happy reading!